Welcome back, everyone, to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Alicia.
Whoa!
Hey, what's going on, Alicia?
Welcome in.
Welcome in.
Thanks.
Our third guest on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Lucky number 3.
Hey.
It better be a good one.
No pressure.
Yes, exactly.
I just said no pressure.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us here today. We're very excited to kind of dive into your topic, of course. Before that, give us a little bit about yourself. Tell the people who you are.
How do you know us?
Yeah.
How far back do you want to go? I'm Alcia. I met Allie when we were like 12, I think, and like the good old Gill swim team.
Hell yeah.
Way back in the day.
Nice.
Long story short, we've been friends since. I'm a bi-weekly dinner guest and a dog riler-upper, apparently.
Great skills to have on the resume. Yeah. Great experience.
We'll add that as your little tagline.
Yeah.
In the documentary that we're eventually going to have, your talking
Correct.
head will be Alicia, bi-weekly dinner guest, dog wrangler.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
What do you do for work, Alicia?
I'm a nurse.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
How long have you been doing that for?
Going on 7 years this summer.
Dang.
Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah,
What department are you in?
I work in the ICU, and
Okay.
I float throughout the whole hospital, so kind of wherever they need me for the night is where I go.
Okay.
So I kind of see it all.
My gosh, you're on night shifts?
I just got off nights, actually, after New Year's.
Okay.
Yeah,
How are
it
you
was-
liking the transition?
I love it, actually. I feel like a human again.
Yes.
It's really nice.
That's I can't imagine 7 years of night shift and then finally transitioning to the daytime.
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah, I
like
thought
you
it was
were-
going to be worse than it was, but it really wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was time.
It's like you were cured of your vampirism.
I was like a little gremlin every day. I mean, you saw me every week. I looked terrible.
Very cool. What do you call it? What do you like about the ICU versus kind of other departments?
I like kind of knowing everything about my patients instead of a little bit, and we kind of have more autonomy in the ICU, so
Okay.
we're kind of expected to do more,
Sure.
and it's a lot more critical thinking, so I'm using different parts of my brain than I do at home.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you call it? Well, let's get into your topic for the day.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's start
Yeah.
off.
Okay,
Are you ready?
cool.
Are you excited? Are you pumped?
I'm ready.
Love it. Let's get into
Okay.
it.
So since this episode's going to come out in March, in honor of Women's History Month,
Oh, heck yeah.
Hey, yeah.
what do you know about Anne Bonny and Mary Read?
Nothing.
I don't think
Anne
anything.
Bonny sounds really familiar. Mary Read, I got nothing.
Okay.
Mary Read sounds familiar to me.
Maybe if we put our heads
Together.
together, we can figure this out.
All right, well, the two of them were two of the most notorious and fearsome pirates to sail in the Caribbean during the golden age of piracy.
Oh.
Did you know?
Yes.
Okay. That's very cool.
That sounds more familiar to me now.
Okay.
I don't know any details aside from some badass pirates, but I'm so excited
Yes.
to learn about this.
All right. So before I kind of fully dive in, I want to do like a little kind of not backstory, but like history refresher of what was going on in the Caribbean at this time.
Yeah.
Just to kind of keep in the back of your mind of what these women were like when we talk about them in piracy, what they were doing.
Cool.
So a big thing to remember from this time is the British Parliament had passed the Navigation Acts, which, in case you don't remember, was a series of laws passed between the 1650s and 1670s that basically said the American colonies can only trade with Britain. So anything leaving America was going to Britain.
Yes.
Anything coming into America had to come from Britain.
Interesting.
So Britain had a monopoly on trade. So where pirates came in, and again, like only at this time in history and in the Caribbean, because other times like they did other things, they would rob merchant ships that were coming into the Caribbean from other countries, like the Spanish and the Dutch, and they would sell the stolen goods in ports where people otherwise couldn't get that stuff. So people kind of liked pirates at this time because they were getting stuff that the British weren't giving them.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So when we talk about the golden age of piracy, it's a period that lasted between approximately 1670 to 1730, and pirate activity ebbed and flowed during 3 different periods during this time, which they called pirate rounds. Anne and Mary sailed during the 3rd round, and this was known as the War on Piracy because the British government was determined to exterminate all pirates at this time. Because pirates, kind of, to put it in a nutshell, fucked up trade for Britain. Because they kind of like infiltrated their way into their monopoly, and Britain wasn't happy.
That makes sense.
But
just-
also to exterminate is so. First of all, very
it's a
Doctor
harsh
Who.
word, but
Second of all,
yeah.
It's an extreme word.
Yeah.
To
It
use.
is an
My
extreme
God.
word, but that's that's Britain in history.
Fair.
So here we are.
Any enemy was eviscerated.
Right.
Yeah.
Essentially. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about the two women's backstory and their upbringing, just as a way to be like, how did we get here? How did these two women end up living a life of piracy and crime? Because you don't typically just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be a pirate now. There are things and steps that have to happen in your life to get to this point.
Is there a pirate school?
Not that I'm aware. I don't know. Maybe. Probably.
Now there
If
is.
there's clown school, there's pirate school.
Yeah, exactly.
So Anne's usually the more well-known of the two, but for the sake of the flow and the story and everything, we're going to start with Mary.
Okay.
So her story begins in England in the 1680s before she's born.
Oh,
What?
So Mary's
she's a time traveler.
Yeah. Surprise.
So Mary's mother was married and she had a son named Mark. Her husband died, but her in-laws continued to financially support her because at the time women couldn't inherit land, they couldn't inherit anything.
Right.
But her in-laws are essentially supporting the son because like that's their heir.
Oh, okay.
So not long after the husband died, her mother has an affair with a sailor. She becomes pregnant with Mary, who's born around 1685. Not long after Mary's born, the son dies, but the mother doesn't tell her in-laws because then she's going to stop getting an allowance.
Oh.
So pretty much from the ages of 4 to 13, Mary's dressed as a boy, she's called Mark, and she's living her dead brother's life.
What?
Yes.
That's wild.
Everyone's fully convinced that she's her brother. Her
Yeah.
in-laws have no idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they live their lives in ignorance, like until they die. And then at the age of 13, Mary's mother finally tells her the truth. She's like, also, holy crap, you're going to go through puberty soon and we're going to have some questions.
Yeah, just a few.
So she's told she is in fact a girl. She now has to dress in like girls' dresses and bodices. She has to do like women's work around the house, cooking, cleaning, like domestic stuff at the time. And she's pissed. At the time, they were living in the country. She was used to like wearing loose shirts and trousers and like running around playing, doing whatever she wanted, and now she can't do any of that. So in an act of rebellion, she decides to be Mark Reed again. She disguises herself as a boy and joins the British Navy at age 13.
Oh.
Yeah.
The Navy at 13?
Yeah, could you imagine
Jesus.
in today's world? Never.
Just like
crazy.
Going into high school and being like, I'll skip school. I'll just go join the Navy.
Right. I can't imagine. I
No.
would be a terrible sailor at 13.
So Mary entered the Navy during the final stages of the War of Grand Alliance, which we're not going to get into. Not enough time for that. She worked as a powder monkey on the ship, so she carried sacks of gunpowder from the ship's hold to the gun crew. So she wasn't like fully a sailor at the time.
Okay.
That's a powder monkey?
Yes,
Interesting.
that's what they were called.
Okay.
So she's just hauling stuff up for other people to do with it.
Right.
She continued to work in the Navy for a few years until England entered the War of Spanish Succession, which again, not going to get into. And then at this time, she leaves the Navy. Life on a ship was very difficult. She kind of had enough of it. So when England entered this war, she goes to the Netherlands to join the British Army, and she's about age 18 here.
Oh.
Yeah, so
wow.
She's going from Navy to Army.
Yes.
Okay.
So she's still able to disguise herself as a young male soldier, and thanks to her naval experience, she quickly impressed her fellow soldiers, and she gained respect. She starts to develop a good rapport with a soldier in her regiment, and over time she falls in love with him. She's still disguised as a man.
Oh.
Yeah. So one night she decides to reveal her true self to him after the rest of the camp had fallen asleep. They're sharing a tent. She like quietly wakes him up, just starts undressing, and he's like, "Okay, cool." And they fall.
Cool.
I don't know.
Sick.
They end up falling in love. They get married, and they both receive an honorable discharge from the army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that as Mark Reed, she received the honorable discharge, or as herself? I guess as Mark Reed.
I think, but from what I read, her regiment found out that she was Mark Reed, and like they supported their marriage and like went to the wedding.
Oh.
So
Okay.
Oh. So
That's kind
were
of-
they discharged for being gay, or was it just like...
no, because they weren't even gay.
Yeah, because they knew
I think
she was
they
a woman.
they knew that they wanted to get out of the army, so they're just like, "You did good, kids."
I'm sorry, like because they think that Mark Reed and this other sailor were gay.
No, I think...
Or am
correct
I
me if
just-
I'm
am
wrong.
I- did I
They
just
know that
mishear?
Mark Reed is a woman.
Yes, they
They
did
find
eventually.
out.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
found out. Yeah, they
Because
knew
she was
they knew
like,
that Mark was
let me
married.
seduce you. Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page.
We're there. It's a very Mulan story.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I'm
it
thinking.
kind of is. So they end up getting married. The two of them move to a town in the Netherlands. They open a tavern. It's going great. Business is booming.
Okay.
But shortly afterwards, her husband falls ill and dies suddenly.
Oh.
So the tavern license was in her husband's name. Since she was his employee, any money that she made technically belonged to him. So the tavern and Mary are technically both her husband's property. So now she can't inherit anything. So now she has no husband to financially support her and no father to financially support her. So she's kind of SOL.
Jeez.
So what does she do? She decides to become Mark Reed again, disguises herself as a man, and rejoins the army.
I guess if it's worked so well in the past, why not
Like,
do it again?
Do what you know.
Yeah, exactly. Become my dead brother.
Right.
Perfect.
Horrifying.
But in this time in the army, she's still grieving the loss of her husband. She's easily distracted, making mistakes. So she ends up getting kicked out of the army, decides she needs a fresh start. So she gets hired to work on a Dutch merchant ship that's heading to the Caribbean. While on the ship, they're attacked by pirates, and she ends up joining their crew. Kind of just briefly, their ship ends up getting word that there's better job offerings coming from the new governor of the Bahamas named Woodes Rogers. So they set sail for the Bahamas, and we're going to pause with Mary at this point.
Okay.
So jumping into Anne, her story, very similar to Anne's, starts before she's born.
God damn.
I was like, another dead brother?
So we're talking Cork County, Ireland in the 1690s. Her father, William Cormac, was married to Mrs. Cormac. Nobody really knows her name. We just call her Mrs. Cormac.
Okay.
And
Natural.
they hire a maid named Peg. William and Mrs. Cormac have cracks in their marriages. Their marriage, not plural.
They've gone through a
Who's to
few.
say?
Yeah.
Mrs. Cormac decides to leave for a couple years and go live with her in-laws. And during this time, William and Peg have an affair. Peg gets pregnant. Mrs. Cormac comes back while she's pregnant, finds out, she's pissed, decides to leave again. She just takes hiatuses from her marriage, because why not? And Peg gives birth to Anne on May 8th, 1697. Pretty much from the day Anne's born, her parents disguise her as a boy, and they call her Andy.
What? Why? Do we know why?
Because at the time, a male illegitimate child was much less of a scandal than a girl, and bastard boys can still inherit land. So they're just doing this for an appearance.
That makes
basically.
sense.
I'm actually going back to Mary Reed. I'm kind of surprised that she was able to get through the military and the Navy, showering and doing all of those things,
Not back then. They weren't showering. They weren't doing physical inspections.
I don't think. I hope they're not doing physical inspections today. Jesus. But what I mean is just you're kind of working with people. You're around. They do shower and hygiene and stuff. I don't know.
Mulan did it.
Okay. From what I read, they said she cut her hair really short and her appearance just looked like a young boy. So she was even as a 18, 20-year-old, she looked like a teenage boy.
Sure.
So she was, at least from chin up, she was able to pull it off. I don't know if the rest of her looked like.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're having a 13-year-old join the Navy, you can always, I guess, just pass yourself off as a younger boy.
Right.
As always a teenage boy who has not as larger masculine features.
Right. It's just that's quite a feat. Especially in those kind of quarters. You know what I mean? It's not you're just
Very
going about your
close.
day and you go back home and you get to whatever. You are constantly in that state
Right,
of
you're sharing tents with people.
Right. Yeah.
Swapping
Anyway.
the deck with people.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway. And Bonnie. Andy Bonnie, if you will.
And Andy Bonny. So growing up to keep up appearances, her father, William, was a lawyer, so they have Anne acting as his apprentice, and they're telling everybody that Anne, as Andy, is his nephew. So they're trying to keep up the disguise that she's a boy. Somehow Mrs. Cormac, again, finds out through the grapevine what's going on, that Anne is William's illegitimate child. She tells William's parents what's happening, and they financially cut him off.
Oh.
Yeah, scandal.
Scandal.
So William, Peg, and Anne end up moving to London to try to start a new business. It's too expensive to live there, so they decide to go to America when Anne's about 10 years old. Shortly after arriving in Charlestown, the mother, Peg, dies.
Oh.
Oh.
She didn't have a big big role. I mean, other than just kind of
I like that you're like,
terrible.
you don't have to be sad at all. She's fine. Okay?
She's a side character.
Yeah, she plays
best.
no pivotal role in this.
Oh God, cut that part out. Oh Jesus. So living in America had two like big defining moments in Anne's life. First, she gets to live as a girl freely and openly for the first time in her life. And then by living in a port town, she becomes really familiar with sailors and pirates who are frequently docking to trade in the area. In the meantime, her father buys a plantation and he learns that women in the Americas can inherit whole estates, so he plans to make Anne the sole heir of this new estate.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
So because of this, he has Anne educated, which included working as a maid in a large property so she can learn how to manage a household and an estate. Like Mary, she hates it. She thinks every day is the same. She thinks domestic work was like stifling and pigeonholing her into a trapped life. Women's dress was super cumbersome and restrictive at the time. They're wearing anywhere from like 3 to 5 layers.
Jeez.
Like you can't bend over, and if you're used to wearing like pants, you're like, this kind of
Yeah.
But she also quickly learns that as a woman, she's both ignored and microscopically examined and judged, whereas when she was living as a boy in London, she could speak her mind, have opinions, and she can't do any of that anymore.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's a woman. Because of all this, she ends up losing her job as a maid. Her behavior quickly becomes erratic, and she starts to spend a lot more time at the docks and starts having affairs with sailors.
Okay.
Word of her behavior spreads in town, and her father starts to lose business. He doesn't quite know why at first, so he makes his way into town. He hears all of the gossip, gets the tea. He drags Anne home and bans her from leaving the plantation. She's pissed. She
Naturally. Yeah.
She doesn't want to be stuck in one place at all, let alone this plantation she wants nothing to do with. And plus, after years of meeting sailors and hearing stories of sailing and pirating adventures, she decides she wants to leave what she considers to be the prison of womanhood.
Okay.
Okay.
To kind of start this whole thing off, she secretly marries a man named James Bonny when she's 16 years old. Her father now is pissed because he wanted to find a suitor who would create a profitable marriage that would bring money, more property, heirs, and possibly a title for her.
Sure.
James, however, was a sailor who occasionally dabbled in piracy and was, quote, a young fellow who belonged to the sea and was not worth a groat, which was like a couple cents. So they're like, this guy's, he's worthless.
I also like that he dabbled in piracy.
Yeah.
He's like, I guess
wasn't an
today.
everyday
Well,
thing.
yeah. I'll take that boat, but not that boat.
Right.
So William ends up disowning and banishing Anne from the home, and now James is upset because he's not going to get a dowry. He thought that William was going to support this marriage and give him some money, and now he's going to get nothing. So Anne's furious with the whole situation. She sets William's house on fire, and her and James sail to the Bahamas.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, what a response.
What an exit.
Jesus.
Right? So Anne and James end up sailing together in the Bahamas for 6 years until about 1718, 1719. And during this time, Anne finally feels free of the strict social expectations that her father put upon her. And this voyage may have been the beginning of her life of piracy, but she's also experiencing things for the first time, like collective decision-making, splitting earnings evenly between people, kind of having a voice, and being seen as an equal amongst everyone she's with.
Yeah.
Right.
So Anne's quickly and enthusiastically assimilating into this new culture, but now James resents his wife. He feels like he was cheated out of a dowry. He felt like he was forced back onto a ship to make a dishonest living that comes with a constant risk of capture. And he now looks at Anne and thinks, how can a woman be so excited to engage in a life of violent crime? And he no longer sees her as a woman, but as a fellow degenerate, and he wants nothing to do with her.
Oh my God.
Yeah, a little harsh.
Yeah.
Boo.
So their ship eventually docks in Nassau in the Bahamas, and instead of finding a new pirate crew to join, James is employed under the new governor of the Bahamas, Woodes Rogers, to become a pirate hunter.
Oh.
Yeah, so this was how Britain was determined to exterminate pirates, was getting people, they're called pirate hunters, and they would just attack pirates.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Well, not not cool.
Well,
But you get it.
I get what you mean by cool. It's
Fun gig.
It's an interesting, high danger profession, I feel,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, I'm hunting people that will kill mercilessly. I guess there's that sense of honor in it, but also I could die.
At any moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And And Britain was so like dead set on this, they were paying people really well to do it.
Okay.
Kind of helped.
Yeah.
So for Anne, her husband becoming a pirate hunter, this was an unforgivable betrayal, and she no longer saw him as her husband. She ends up spending a lot of time in taverns and has numerous affairs. In the spring of 1720, she meets Captain Jack Rackham, who was also known as Calico Jack, was his pirate name.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
They fall in love and they want to get married.
Oh.
However, there's still the detail that she's still technically married to James Bonny.
Yeah. That's fine.
So divorce wasn't super common at the time because they thought it ruined everyone's reputation who was involved. And they're like, if you don't have your reputation, you don't have anything.
Right.
However, there's another option. I can't for the life of me say this with a straight face. It's called wife selling.
Wife selling?
Wife selling.
Oh.
Yeah.
Casual.
It's a fucked up version of wife swap? Like, what is this?
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's where marriage becomes the exchange of property with women as the object. So ideally, it was a win-win situation for everyone involved.
So, like, Jack Bonny would get money for his wife, so then she could then marry Calico Jack?
Yes. So her current husband, James Bonny.
James, sorry.
And the guy she wants to marry, Jack Rackham. So Rackham would pay James so he could get Anne as his wife, and then Anne would be leaving a marriage that she's unhappy in to hopefully go into a better situation.
See this on Facebook Marketplace all the time.
All the time. Waiting for that TLC documentary. Is this something that was, like, legally, or was this more, like, colloquially, this is just how things, like, ran?
So depends where you were. So in this situation, James and Rackham had initially come to an agreement to a price, but the governor, Rogers, was against the practice. He saw it as illegal and he would have to like validate it, which he wasn't going to do. And he threatened to put both Rackham and Anne in prison. Oh. So in some places it worked, and it just depended on who was in charge and kind of what the social situation was.
Wild.
Right?
Because then also, like, you set the terms of, like, how much your wife is worth.
Well, yeah, if you hate her, then it's like, get her out of here.
Yeah, they had to, like, barter for it.
Also, imagine being the wife, like, hey, more than that.
We had some good years together.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yikes.
So instead, Rackham and Anne just decide they're going to sneak away and head back to sea. First, they need to quickly assemble a new crew. They couldn't exactly go and like advertise that they're hiring for a pirate crew because at the time it's illegal. So they're doing everything.
Posters with a little pull tab.
Right.
Yeah.
Call this number.
Yeah.
So they're doing everything through word of mouth in taverns because Anne has spent a lot of time in taverns and she knows a bunch of these people. It just so happened that there was a war veteran with maritime experience who had recently landed in Nassau who was looking for their next career. They're pointed in the direction of where this crew is gathering, and Rackham hired Mark Reed on the spot.
Yes! Once you said war veteran.
Here it is.
Oh, there we go.
So Anne and Mary's stories have now intertwined.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's the greatest crossover.
So together on the night of August 22nd, 1720, Rackham and his new crew, which included Anne and Mary, steal the fastest ship in the Bahamas, which belonged to a sailor who was loyal to Governor Rogers. Rogers is now pissed. For one thing, his buddy lost the ship, and he also sees this...
Womp womp.
Just the little things, you know. But he also sees this as a direct assault on his authority and his threat to his reputation as a successful pirate hunter.
Oh.
So on September 5th, 1720, he issued a proclamation for their arrest, specifically mentioning all three by name, saying that Rackham, Anne, and Mary were, quote, hereby proclaimed pirates and enemies to the crown of Great Britain, and are to be treated as so and deemed by all his majesty's subjects. So they might be like escaping to a new life, but now they have a price on their heads.
Worth it?
Perhaps.
Maybe.
We also know from his proclamation that Mary was known as Mary in Rackham's crew and not as Mark, so we don't know how they find out.
Yeah.
But she's no longer disguised as a man. Probably in part because Anne is also known as Anne, so now we have two women on the ship.
That's fair. She feels more comfortable.
Doing it together.
Yeah.
So starting out, this new crew was attacking small ships and fishing vessels. They were successfully overpowering each of them, but the takings were small and the crews quickly growing frustrated. There was one day they decided to use a bunch of stolen goods and they disguised themselves as fishermen. And when they docked to trade, they basically lured a bunch of guys on ship and were like, you're joining the crew now. And they had no choice.
All right.
Yeah. So they've got a bunch of replenished supplies, a couple of fresh sailors, spirits are lifted, everybody's feeling good, they go about their business. They eventually get to a point where they're attacking just about every ship they come across, and they're doing so successfully.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're winning, I guess, in terms of pirate.
They're successful pirates.
Yes.
Is their bounty getting like larger and larger as you go?
Yes. I think they kind of start realizing like what ships are carrying what, and they're they're going after everything they come across, but
Fair.
I think part of it was luck too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Perhaps, I don't know. So just to kind of paint a picture of what two women looked like on a pirate ship in the 1700s. In peacetime, they wore traditional female clothing on board to prove that nothing could hinder them from performing their duties. Like, they're out to prove a point that, like, hey, wearing a skirt isn't going to stop me from swabbing a deck for what you do on a ship.
Yeah.
But in battle, they wore men's clothing because it's more practical and it had more freedom of movement. And they were known to keep their hair down and loose with their shirts open, baring their breasts, because they thought it gave them power and frightened their enemies. So they were going for shock and awe.
Respect.
That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, like, if you're in battle and you want to distract your enemy, what better way than just letting the girls out?
Well, especially with like how censored and like covered up women were back then.
Right.
Whereas like, oh, I showed you my ankle, but you're really horny.
Ooh la la.
But just have like your titties out, like incredible.
Exactly.
You didn't like that?
I like that they found it as like a power thing, or like to incur fear almost.
Right.
Yeah. Not incur. Strike fear.
Yes.
Yes. Into the.
I think incur worked.
No, because to incur is to like take that on, and they're not taking on fear. They're
giving
delivering.
it out.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay.
Anyway,
Hey.
here's a little language lesson for you.
I love learning.
Anyway, all right, back to the story.
So Mary, thanks to her military experience, was the one leading many of the charges in battle, and she helped Anne hone her fighting skills, and they ended up becoming two of the most brutal fighters on the ship.
Hell yeah.
Oh.
I read this passage that I really liked, that it describes like what an attack with the two of them would have looked like, and not just kind of what they do, but also why they did some of what they did.
Yeah.
So it was describing them attacking a merchant ship off the coast of modern-day Haiti, and it was the testimony of one of the sailors on the merchant ships. He talked about how Rackham and his crew came upon them and boarded the ship before the merchants could attempt to defend themselves. They were shocked when two women, dressed as men, their hair flowing wildly around them, giving them an almost ethereal appearance, emerged in battle. Anne and Mary cursed and swore with more ferocity than any of the other pirates, and their shirts were open, exposing their breasts for all to see. This decision to fight partially naked was not meant to be sexual. They used their femininity to defy their enemies' expectations of pirates. Two women who were previously forced to either hide or submit to restricted social norms were now taking back their womanhood to show the world they were not slaves to domesticity. Their fighting skills were equal to or even better than the men, and their ferocity was unmatched. Their language was a signal that they had no fear of anyone or any consequence. The merchants had never encountered women who behaved in such a manner, and they were stunned into submission.
Wow.
That's great. Okay, so in my head, when you said that like their shirts were open, I imagined like a lot of cleavage, but that passage makes it seem like they're fully
open.
Out.
Yeah, it's not just a deep V. It's
right.
like
That's what I thought.
undone.
No,
it's really cool because it's just like on top of like the shock factor of having a woman's breast out. It's also just being like, I am not wearing anything to protect myself. I'm invincible.
Yes.
You can't do anything, and that's really cool.
That's crazy. I didn't think about that. I didn't. Yeah. But I guess if I was fighting on a ship and I saw that, I would also kind of even today be like, what's happening? What are you doing?
And that's kind of the effect they were going for.
Yeah.
Right.
So Rackham and his men were blown away by how effective this strategy proved to be. So now the women are seen like not completely as equals to the men on the ship, but pretty close.
Yeah.
And the strategy continued to work, so that's what they kept going with.
Okay.
It contributes to their success.
My other
Love
question is, it's interesting in the passage because they're like, oh, they aborted the ship before the merchants could even defend themselves. How do you not see another large ship like behind you or
Right,
something.
and they would announce themselves as pirates too. Like they would roll up I think it was called the Jolly Roger, which
Jolly
is like
Roger,
the
yeah.
skull and crossbones
Yeah,
flag.
yeah.
And like, hey, we're pirates. We're coming to get you.
Like,
So
how did you not have time to
I don't know
defend
if
yourself?
it was like at night and they were sleeping. There were no further
maybe.
details
That
on
makes
that.
sense.
But
I do know one pirate fact. Was that
Only one?
I know so many. Yeah. Fun fact. This is not the fact that I was going to say, but a different aside. For those of you who don't know, I used to dress up like a pirate. It started in middle school, went through high school. September 19th is National Talk Like a Pirate Day. Just so you know.
You never did it in college, did you?
I did it for some like improv shows, but not
okay.
like round on campus.
Right.
There were enough weirdos on campus.
You didn't need to
I
add
didn't need
to
to
that
add
crew?
to the
Yeah.
pile. Yeah. No, my actual fact that I was going to say was that the Jolly Roger was like a specific pirate flag that's just become kind of like the general pirate flag. But each pirate had their own version of the Jolly Roger, of their pirate flag. And one of them, it might have been either these lady pirates or a different lady pirate, or it might have been a different pirate entirely. I don't remember the name. But it was like, it was a skeleton holding like a red sword that like they'd fly up. It was always on a black flag, but it was always depicting a different image. And then you'd be like, oh my God, that's so-and-so pirate, like fucking run. Like you knew who was coming after you by the flag that was raised.
Oh, very cool.
Oh.
That was their
Fun fact,
identifier.
thank you.
Now
Yeah.
you know.
Now you know.
I had a big like pop-up book on pirate facts.
That's adorable.
It was all because of Pirates of the Caribbean. So.
high quality movie.
Casual.
Anyway, please
So-
continue.
The crew is doing really well. Things
Yeah.
are going great. However, there are a couple mistakes that were made. There were 2 ships that they attacked where Rackham had made the decision to set sailors free instead of either killing them or forcing them to join the crew.
Oh.
So word starts spreading, and the women are gaining reputation, notoriety, partly because of the witnesses who were set free and their testimony, and also in part due to Governor Rogers' proclamation for their capture. Rogers, who's still pissed about this whole situation, because he thought their escape made him look weak. And remember Anne's first husband, James Bonny? He's gonna come back. He's also still mad and pretty humiliated because he thought his wife escaped him and he still has no money. So first he was cheated out of a dowry, no money.
Right.
He thought he was gonna sell his wife. That fell through, no money. So he can't catch a break. So James offers his services to Rogers to hunt Rackham and Anne down and kill them as a pirate hunter.
Wow. Okay.
Thanks.
Rogers is like, cool, awesome. Here's a ship. Gives him a ship. And Bonny sets out to get this reward that he's promised and his revenge. He doesn't get very far, and he's killed when his ship's hit by a storm. So
He doesn't even like fight his wife
no.
in like this glorious battle.
What a great story that would have been.
Right? Like in this giant storm, there's swells of waves crashing over. They're fighting, clashing swords on top of the mast. He just dies in a storm.
Yeah, unfortunately, their story was not directed by Jerry Bruckheimer.
Jerry
Damn.
Bruckheimer.
Well, next time.
Next time.
So the scorned first husband is no longer hunting them, but there are other groups of people who are.
Right.
Skip to late October 1720. We meet a man named Captain Jonathan Barnett. He hears word of Rackham's attack from the witnesses who were set free, and he heads to where they're rumored to be. He kind of easily finds their ship, docked off of the coast of Jamaica, and this night Rackham and his crew are they're celebrating their recent wins, they're drinking copiously, partying, and Rackham over time had been developing this like grandiose confidence, and he thinks nobody's going to find him, nobody's going to beat him, he thinks he's invincible.
There it is.
Anne and Mary,
There's
however,
that ego.
the women, they're not stupid. They knew that Governor Rogers had a proclamation out for their arrest, and because of this, like likely had pirate hunters out after them. And they knew that since they had let witnesses go, it was just a matter of time until they were found. So on this night, they're partying, having a great time, or the men are, and the women are keeping watch alone. So Barnett and his crew, they found the ship. They could hear them partying. They decide to wait until it's dark for a couple hours so they can attack when they can't see them. They're like, plus at this time, the pirates are going to be too drunk to function.
Yeah.
Right. Classic pirates.
Always too drunk to function.
Where's the rum? So they waited out for a couple hours. They make themselves known, announce themselves. Anne and Mary see them and they start shouting to the crew that they were found and they're under attack, and they're urging the men to grab weapons. The men aren't having it. They're just like mumbling angrily to each other, and one of them shouts, "We will strike, no strikes."
What?
They're like, no.
Yeah, we'll die. Fucking
No.
So Rackham eventually comes up on deck. Captain Barnett's calling for his surrender. The women are urging Rackham, like, hey, we can't win this fight. Rackham refuses, and he gives the order to get ready for battle.
Oh, shit.
The men are trash. They're just kind of stumbling, bumbling around, looking for weapons, grabbing kind of whatever they can. And in the chaos, a cannonball is fired through the side of Rackham's ship, and shouting at Rackham to give, like, the official orders to attack, because he had sent a man to hide below deck.
What?
That's...
Yeah.
But
On a
they
ship?
know you're on the ship.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go.
It's not like the other captain's like, I don't have any object permanence. I don't know where they went.
Where'd they go?
Peekaboo really fucks with me.
How wild.
So Anne's pissed. She's yelling at the men to stay on deck and fight. Mary's
Right.
yelling, quote, "If there's a man among ye, you'll come up and fight like the men ye are to be." So she's yelling, fight like a man.
Yeah.
Nobody's listening. They're all kind of scampering downstairs. So Mary takes her pistol, fires it several times into the hold where the men are hiding, wounding several of them and killing at least one.
Oh my God.
They're under attack and tempers are flaring.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
just a
little-
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Jesus.
Right? So Barnett and his men board the ship and they engage the women in combat because at this point they're the only ones left on deck.
Right.
His crew knew that there were 2 women on Rackham's ship, but they were still so surprised at their ferocity that they didn't even, some of them didn't even lift weapons against the women, and they were just like, what are we going to do? Barnett later admitted that he was most impressed with how they fought, and he declared them to be the bravest and toughest opponents he's ever faced.
Wow.
Even so, the ship's quickly lost, everyone's taken prisoner onto Barnett's ship, and they're brought to Spanish Town, Jamaica, charged with piracy, and thrown in prison to await their fate.
Yikes.
Okay.
When they're in prison, the men and women are separated and they're tried separately. The men were tried first on November 16th, 1720. Long story short, all the witnesses who they had set free came back. They tried against the men. They were all found guilty of piracy and sentenced to hang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So November 18th, 2 days later, is when the men are to be executed and then sent to the gibbet. So they would hang people and then wait for them to be dead, and then take them down and put them in this, like, block it up, like, by a dock or, like, by the water where people could see it and passing ship, like, hey, pirates, ye be warned. Like,
Right.
if you continue to engage in piracy and you're caught, this is what's going to
what
happen to
happened
you.
to you. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So Rackham and his men know that this is their fate. Rackham's freaking out, rightfully so. He's begging the guards to let him see Anne before he's executed. They're finally like, okay, fine. They bring Anne to his cell, and he's begging her for forgiveness for his cowardice, in quotes, the night that they're caught. Anne looks at him and says, quote, "I'm sorry to see you here, but if you had fought like a man, you need not hang like a dog."
Dang.
Oh.
And just spat in his face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's the last thing she says to her husband before he's hung.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Rough.
She's still upset.
She's still a little mad.
Just a little bit. So the men all meet their fate and they're hung. A couple days later, November 28th, Anne and Mary are put on trial. They're pretty immediately found guilty of piracy. They're asked if there is any reason they should not receive the death penalty. They both say no, and they're sentenced to hang. However, they have a trick up their sleeve.
Okay.
It's only after their sentence is read that they both announce they're pregnant. Yeah, they called it pleading their bellies.
Yeah.
But they were both asked if there was a reason they shouldn't get the death penalty, and they both said no.
Right.
Right.
So the thinking was, if they had announced that they were pregnant before their sentence was read, it would look like them begging for mercy.
Uh-huh.
But if they waited to say they're pregnant until after the sentence is read, the court has to show mercy on them, because who's going to hang a pregnant woman?
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
right. That's interesting.
That's a good call. That's a good strategy.
Were they actually pregnant?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, they had to
shit.
do.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they had to do tests and, like, prove that they were pregnant.
Yeah.
Both were.
Huh.
So
That's lucky, unless they, like, somehow strategized that.
Yeah, unless like the pregnancy was not like
Right.
on their terms.
Correct.
who's to say? We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it worked, and they were both escorted back to their cells without a date for execution. But in April of 1721, Mary falls ill. Of course, she's not getting any medical care in prison in the 1720s. They called it prison fever, what we today know as typhus.
Oh, okay.
Yikes.
Mary dies in prison before giving birth, and she's buried in St. Catherine Parish in Jamaica on April 28th, 1721. As for Anne, there's no record of what happened to her after the trial. There's no record that she's executed, but there are records that she's also buried in St. Catherine Parish December 29, 1733, so 12 years later, at the ripe age of 36.
Oh,
wow.
So
fuck, they're so young.
Yeah.
Oh.
So most likely her sentence was waived and she just got to live out the rest of her life.
Yeah.
With her child, I assume.
Yeah, there's no record of her.
There's not her.
That's why. I wonder if there's descendants just like running around.
How was that again?
Running around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool to be able to do that lineage.
And then the British government comes after you
Yeah,
for the crimes of your ancestors.
Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
The irony.
How horrifying.
Yeah. So from the time that they had initially stolen the ship in Nassau to the time they were captured was only 2 months. So they did a lot in a very short amount of time. They pissed off a lot of people in 2 months.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work in 2 months.
Yeah.
Are you stealing a boat a day? Like, what's happening?
And like to build up that amount of reputation, notoriety, which continued to grow even after they were tried and hung.
Right.
They just continue to be popular.
Damn.
Very
Good for
short amount of
them.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
on you.
That's the abridged story of Anne, Bonny, and Mary Read.
Holy shit.
Awesome.
I think their story is so interesting, like not just for what they did, but like remembering the time period that they were in.
Yeah.
Like they were both born illegitimate children. They were both raised as boys for lack of a better word, socioeconomic reasons. And like once they're able to like fully live as women for the first time and they start to experience like what the traditional female roles of the time were, which were like having babies and having a household, they're like, screw this.
Right.
Like they had a taste even as
Yeah.
like young boys, and for Mary as a young teenager, early 20s, like what it was like to, in loose quotes, live in a man's world.
Right.
Yeah.
And like have a voice and be seen as an equal. And I think they just wanted to continue doing that and not be kind of stifled into traditional female roles.
Right. Well, and
That's
to
crazy.
have like the courage and the power to do that then,
Yeah.
right? And like I guess just because they had the taste, maybe they
Mm-hmm.
felt more empowered to versus
Yeah.
someone who like doesn't know what that's like and like
Right.
trying to get into that world, but
Right, since they knew more of, they didn't have like
Right.
a tunnel vision of their world. like
Exactly.
most women did at the time. Wow.
Yeah.
it's
That's
the 2
wild.
months that's insane to me.
Yeah.
And fighting
I
with
read
just
that and I
like
was
your
like,
breasts
what?
out.
It's wild that they pretty much led almost the same life and wound up on the same boat.
Yeah.
Like, what a great
Yeah.
little connection they have.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think they're just a couple of badass bitches who were ahead of their time.
Hell yeah.
1,000%. And what a story for Women's History Month.
To kick it off right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for telling the
it's
story.
my pleasure.
It was great to learn all about it. Glad we got to talk about pirates.
You always want to talk
I
about
love
pirates.
pirates.
Well, again, thank you, Alicia, for being our third guest on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And what a wonderful story. So thank you, everyone, for sticking around. Like, follow, subscribe on all forms of social media at WDYK_podcast. And that's it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for
Okay.
subscribing. That's all.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.